But I recently got into like one of my favorite television shows from when I was a kid, which I like when I was a kid, I had a bed. After this cartoon, I had my, like you saw John Tavares's bed, mine was this. I'll explain to you what it is in a second. So it's on Hulu now, and that was the original Speed Racer. Okay.
Yeah. I was gonna say Chili Willy.
No, the original Speed Racer, which was like one of the original animes of from Japan, is absolutely. And now they just put 60 episodes on Hulu.
Very addictive song. Go Speed Racer.
It's horrible though.
Racer, but it's addictive.
That part of it is really good, right? Like that's the hook of the song. The rest of it,
that's what I'm telling you.
The rest of it, oddly, like it's translated from Japanese to English and doesn't rhyme in the worst possible ways. Like it's setting up to rhyme.
Yeah.
And the word that should rhyme with, and then it just throws another word in there. That kind of thing.
You know what's funny about the Speed Racer thing? I literally just purged, and I've got a box full of like DVDs and VHSs and stuff that we're getting rid of. And I've kept box sets and stuff, and I kept the Speed Racer box set. I would not let them go.
Yeah, I wonder how many episodes there were made. Like I'm not sure if there were 60. There were 60 made, but it is the funniest thing. Like, hey Kevin,
Racer X. I was a big Racer X fan.
We're live, so I'm just talking about for a second my
Just to be honest, I hated Speed Racer. I liked Racer X.
Well, Racer X. So I've gotten in watching Speed Racer on Hulu right now, which is one of my favorite things as a kid. I had a Speed Racer bed, a Speed Racer comforter. And the whole 9 yards. But Racer X, who is, no spoiler alert. Can you spoil something that came out, a cartoon that came out in 1960?
No, there's no spoiler alert.
All right, so spoiler alert is Racer X is Speed Racer's brother.
Right.
And it's reminded of you in every episode. Like, Racer X, who Speed Racer does not know is his long lost brother. Every time Racer X is mentioned, Trixie, who's his sister, well, I thought was his sister, but actually is his girlfriend. I remembered it as his sister.
It's the opposite of Star Wars. Princess Leia.
I remember being into Trixie as a kid. Like, this came out in 1968, so that's what the year I was born.
Wikipedia has it at 52 episodes. They don't have 60.
So 52. So that's all. I think that's how many episodes are on Hulu now.
And possibly if you've ever seen the movie Speed Racer,
it's horrible. It's horrible.
It is possibly the worst reboot.
But I implore you guys out there. My challenge for everybody out there: if you have Hulu, is to watch a couple Speed Racer episodes, and you will just absolutely lose it and how hilarious it is in retrospect. Like, because there's a lot of anime fans. Like my son, a lot of his friends are into anime big time. It's like a big thing for young kids to be into nowadays.
Yeah, this was my first introduction into any kind of anime.
Right, but this is where anime all began. Like this is the beginning of anime, and all the weird things that you might love about anime now, like the ironic laughter at times that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That comes from Speed Racer too. It's like, Speed, if we crash this car, our family will be ruined, and we won't be able to afford food forever. And everybody just goes, ha ha ha. The strangest things. Like you wouldn't. It just doesn't make any sense. It's hilarious. It's absolutely worth watching on Hulu, and you'll crack up. And I mean, like I said, Trixie was everything for me. Like she was my first crush on television.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, Trixie was. I was probably 4 or 5. That's when you knew. I think parents knew they had a heterosexual.
Okay. Go ahead, Peter.
I was going to say anime. My first introduction to anime was the classic, and only had 2 seasons. Star Blazers.
Oh my God! I was just about to.
Wait, Brian. So before you go into Star Blazers, I'm going to play a second of the theme song. Here we go.
Oh, the Speed Racer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is well worth it. Notice how it doesn't rhyme and should. I don't remember the beginning part of it. Here it comes.
No, it sounds like the Jetsons.
Here comes Speed Racer. He's a demon on wheels.
Anybody else?
And he's gonna be chasing after someone.
Okay, shut it off, please. before I projectile vomit.
And when the odds are against him,
at that point, the car just crashes and everyone dies.
Hang on, I'll get to the end here.
Racer, go!
That's the best part.
The Go Speed Racer Go.
Racer Go. That's the best.
It sounds like the Jetsons theme.
Yeah, I'm telling you though, there is some weird stuff that goes on in this show, like weird, like especially in the Me Too movement. This is not a show that
right.
fix with the Me Too movement at all. Poor Trixie is just
None
always
of them do.
today, but always like, I'm not going to be saved by a girl kind of stuff going on everywhere. Really, oh man.
But the racing stuff's actually good.
Oh no, as a kid, I was so into it. Like, even though it was completely unrealistic and made no sense whatsoever. Like,
they could change lanes with, you know.
Right, the one we were watching, the 86 cars started the race. Only 2 finished. Like 84 people were killed.
No, but let's follow up on what Peter was talking about, because Star Blazers. I remember. I mean, first of all, it's like I was, my dad was a history teacher, and I was into World War II and watching documentaries and stuff like that, as well as watching cartoons. And Star Blazers, they took like the old Japanese battleship Yamato. Raised it up and built a spaceship out of it. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and the warp drive and the cannon in it, and they had to go to Gamelon, and then because they were launching this raid on Earth, and Earth was going to be destroyed if they didn't stop the Gamelons. And then the second season they had to do it. Dude, it was awesome. In fact, back when torrenting was a new thing, that was the first thing I went to look for on torrents to see if I could find copies of that. And I found both seasons. I have them saved. I couldn't believe it. I was like giddy. The funny thing was I tried watching it with my youngest son when he was younger. I probably got into it when I was around 9. Yeah. And we started, but the story was a little slow at first. And it's like a sci-fi animated soap opera.
Yes.
And it just, the nuances in that are totally lost on today's generation. And I love it. I watched it. He kind of gave up on it. I was like reliving my childhood.
It was like a cartoon version of Battlestar Galactica before. And Battlestar Galactica was on TV after it. So I'm wondering whether it was sort of like inspired by it.
Kevin, did you have any cartoons growing up as a kid that you were?
I was a little early for Speed Racer, but Johnny Quest was big when I was a kid, and everybody was kind of caught up. And then Saturday morning cartoons, which now don't exist, were just like huge in the 1960s. Like there was nobody played any baseball between 8 a.m. and noon on Saturday.
Yeah, there's no way, right?
Cartoons.
Yeah, I still think to this day that has hurt the DC universe. Like I think Marvel has had a big rebound. Marvel's obviously huge right now, and the DC stuff I think has never quite gained momentum because people of our generation see it as the Super Friends.
Yeah, Super Friends killed it. Justice League before Super Friends was great.
Yeah,
Super Friends killed it.
Remember I know. Remember the weird thing about Super Friends at the end? It would be like Batman teaching you how to floss.
Yeah, I mean, like the monkey. I hated the monkey. Oh.
Well,
Wonder Twins. Come on, now this is all like really classic stuff.
Now I'm dating myself here, but one of the local stations, and people in Toronto remember this because they had the Buffalo stations. One of the local stations in Buffalo, Tom Joles, who was the weatherman, came on the mornings on Saturday and he was Commander Tom, and they did the show Rocket Ship 7. And they all they did was they got all the old cartoons. So it was like 3 hours of Woody Woodpecker, Popeye, Chili Willy, Tom and Jerry. I mean, these were old ones, but they recycled them and they
did that on Channel 11 in New York. There was like a Captain Joe McCarthy or something.
Right.
He had like a Navy suit and he showed Popeye for 3 hours. Yeah,
it definitely says something about your personality when you remember. Like I remember being frustrated by the fact that Tom couldn't catch Jerry, and I remember being frustrated by the fact that the Roadrunner never died. These certain completely. I was just
wanted the Roadrunner to die.
I did. I just felt bad for I thought like the Coyote was putting in more effort. Like he was like, the Coyote was putting in a lot of work to this thing. I mean, how much money was the Coyote spending at Acme? Come on, he was buying all this stuff. He was. And all the stupid Coyote did, and the Coyote is, by the way, we had this debate the other day in our family, is, by the way, a girl. No.
What are you talking about?
Roadrunner is a girl. The Coyote is.
Yeah, the Roadrunner was.
Yeah, yes.
There's a lot of debate about that in our family. I don't know.
Well, Tweety Bird was a girl bird, and Sylvester was a boy cat.
All right, now we need to start the show.
Let's start the show.
Yeah, because the chat room is going ballistic.
I'm sorry, guys. Just had to share that with you. All right, we will just go. Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, August 14th, 2018.
I'm Woody. I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Peter Tessier.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
And I am Eklund, although my kids tell me I laugh like Muttley.
No, you don't. No, you do actually. I agree with your kids. You actually do. I didn't think you did.
There we go. And you're watching Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday all year long. It doesn't matter how hot it is outside. And we're going to get into a lot of things today, a lot of little quick hit things. We're going to talk about the Red Wings and Zetterberg and Larkin. And we're going to talk about the signing that just happened in Nashville with Ryan Ellis. And I also have some news on the Humboldt team. There's some really good stuff out there. But I first wanted to start off just really quickly with something that was brought up to me last night. And I think it is fascinating to think about the fact that, through all that's happened this offseason, how many people out there have mentioned the fact that Tyler Seguin is also an unrestricted free agent next year.
Oh yeah, we've talked about it.
We've talked about it, but it's like, obviously it's Dallas, but it's like not nearly to the point. And the interesting thing about the fact that he's making $5, he's only making a little over $5 right now, right? He's really underpaid. It's a very similar situation to Tavares. I mean, they're both number 91 for crying out loud. But besides that, the interesting thing that comes into play when I was talking to somebody yesterday is that they said, well, look at Dallas. They talked to Tavares. They're in on Carlson. Dallas, you would think, would put priority on signing Seguin.
But how can you when you have a brand new coach where if the new coach doesn't like him?
But it's Tyler Seguin. I mean, it's like,
if the coach if he doesn't work with the new coach though, then they'll trade him.
If this was anywhere else, I mean, not anywhere else, but if this was in, say, 20 other NHL cities, this would be a way bigger story. I mean, this is a star player who is not look at what Carlson obviously is a star player, but Seguin is, he's not that. I mean, he's one of the top players as well in the NHL. And he's a forward, granted, but there's not even I haven't heard, Kevin, have you heard even any talk about renegotiating? Or?
Well, I mean, I think your comment is fair, but I think everybody sort of understands what the situation is down there, and I think they will get him. But when I say that, I thought they would re-sign Tavares as well. So say again, they all understand the importance of it. He's thrived down there. He likes it down there. Yeah. If you follow him on social media, he's really sort of caught up and being the guy down there. So you'd guess they'd re-sign him, and I think it'll get done. And everybody likes playing for a Jim Nill team. So
I know that.
So I think my guess is that it's going to happen. But I don't disagree with you. I mean, if it were any other place, there'd be Dallas. Hockey is not king down in Dallas.
Right. And this time of year, of course, football is huge, right? So that's right now, football is big.
Well, I mean, that was the explanation too. Yesterday I wrote the NBC, more diverse schedule story, and as I was figuring out, I looked at some of the teams that weren't doing as well. A lot of teams did a lot better than they had in the past under the schedule, but New Jersey and Dallas, and I decided just to let the fans sort of sort it out and make their own comments about it. But the one thing that I would say about Dallas that hurts them is, they didn't make the playoffs last year. But more importantly is, in that marketplace, they're not even big. They have work to do. We always talk all the time about, Carolina and everything else. And, they have a solid fan base, but it's not overwhelming.
Right. I know a lot of their fans, and it's definitely a cult following. There was an update July 27th that talks were ongoing.
Yeah. And if you look at the situation, and Russ and I and Kevin, you were there, we sort of got a feel of Dallas when we were there for the draft. The thing is that, you look at their salary structure. Spezza's $7.5 million drops off at the end of this year, so they're not going to be up against the cap in terms of being able to afford Seguin. If Seguin is demanding over $9 million, which is probably what he's going to 9.5, maybe 10. In the new NHL, where Tavares is getting $11 million, so they can afford him. It's a no tax state, and he likes it there. So I think some of the reasons why the chatter is not so much is because everybody thinks he's going to re-sign there, and I think that's realistic.
Sign Tavares or Carlson,
but he's not, I don't think he's the player that Tavares is.
Maybe no, but had they committed that kind of money to either of those players, then what? The fact that they were after those players makes me think that they're not sure they can get them back. It makes you wonder about that.
Oh, I disagree on that.
I disagree on that too. Heck, you know what it is? At this time last summer, the Islanders weren't negotiating with Tavares anymore.
Yeah.
Dallas they've had ongoing negotiations with Sagan. Jim Nils commented about it. That's a lot more aggressive. That's a lot more
my top 3 to 5 GMs in the league. I think he's outstanding, and I completely trust him. But it just felt. I mean, so you think they could have managed to have, Ben's on a big contract. They could have gotten Tavares in on a big contract, and they can get Sagan on a big contract as well. They could have 3 like $10 million players.
Yeah, I do. I mean, look how far the cap is.
Right.
That city can support it. I mean, that's what I wonder. It's just. I think
they do okay attendance-wise. Like I said, I
think their attendance is fine too. So.
Yeah, I don't think
I'll give them credit, and I'll give them lots of credit for lots of things. But this is a long tail of a situation down there. They're playing the long game, and they have forever. I mean, and since they came in, the first All-Star game I covered was in Dallas, and
I covered that one.
And and to me, I was blown away by, and they took us to see the youth hockey program and all that stuff, and I was just blown away by the youth, and that tells you that when those kids grow up, they're all going to be fans. That this is a long game. This is a really long game, and they already have a player that in Seth Jones, right, who came out of that program.
Yeah, Dallas is 15th in the league in attendance, 18,110 a game, 97.7% occupancy. That's good.
No, that is really good. Okay, so I guess
Seth Jones came out of Colorado.
Came out of Colorado. I thought
Yeah.
Tyler Myers was out of Texas, I believe.
I thought there was a defense. I thought it was okay. Yep, you got it. Yeah, you're definitely right. Colorado, of course, we knew that. Anyway, that was my little thought on that. But let's move on.
Brian Leach was born in Texas, but nobody cares because he grew up in Connecticut.
Yeah, even Tyler Myers, I think, moved when he was like 10 to Calgary, 10 or 11, something like that.
So we got an NHLer yet, Russ, out of the Texas system?
Oh, no, there are. I mean, I know Max Gildon, who just got drafted, I believe is from Texas. But no, I'm forgetting somebody really good. Hold on.
I mean, we must have some good. I mean, you can only imagine that it's going to get better and better and better, right? So, with the coaching has to improve first, and then everything goes from there.
I mean, Seth Jones was born in Texas.
Was born in Texas, right? Okay.
Yeah, I think it was when his dad was playing for the Mavericks.
It was. There's somebody else though. A lot of guys were born in Texas.
I thought he played youth hockey in Texas. I guess not. So anyway, so moving on to Ryan Ellis.
There's 2 guys: Blake Coleman, Stefan Nason. Those are the 2.
We haven't had, obviously we have the Arizona. We have the big guy out of Arizona, but we haven't yet had the big guy out of Texas. Then let's talk about Ryan Ellis, because Ryan Ellis's contract just extended just a half hour before the show. This is Ryan Ellis is a huge player. A lot of people suspected, what's Nashville going to do with Roman Josi coming up? That's a huge issue because, he's going to make more. He's 2 years away, right? He's going to make a lot more
after 2020. Yeah,
after 2020. And you already have tons of money being put into PK Subban. You're throwing a lot of money into the defense in Nashville. This is the interesting thing about this contract. It's 8 years, $50 million, right? So
6.25 per.
That's a good number, for a player who has been good. And I know, Laviolette loves him. I've always heard that Laviolette's a huge Ryan Ellis person. And Ryan Ellis was huge in their run 2 years ago. Last year missed most of the year with an injury, of course, but then came back and still was very strong. Great power play guy. But Kevin, does this put them in a bind at all?
Well, I actually have asked about this, and the basic position I'm being told is, the Predators are a contending team,
right?
And Ellis's contract doesn't change anything for this year,
right?
So I think they're basically going to delay any decisions about what's going to happen until next summer. So you won't see them reacting in any way to the fact of this new contract. Right. And the fact that they've got Josi this year. But I think next summer they'll have some decisions to make because they're obviously going to pay him as well. They're paying Subban. They've got a lot of guys that they have to pay, and they could at some point may have to break up that defense. Maybe not. Maybe they'll move somebody else, or who knows what the growth will be. But their position now is we don't have to do anything, and they won't.
Well, good. Peter, tell everybody what you were telling us before the show regarding his contract status, or the no trade, no move.
Well, Bob McKenzie revealed that there is no trade or no movement clause,
okay.
And it's a $7 million signing bonus on July 1st. So it'll be interesting to see if other things come out. And I haven't looked at the contract. I've just seen the AAV. I don't know if there's lockout protection in it in any way, shape, or form, but obviously $7 million signing bonuses, some security. The thing about this is that, we talk about the Preds and are they in trouble? And let's not forget, and maybe someone mentioned already, but $7 million of Pekka Rinne comes off the end of the season too. And that's going to be a big amount of freedom if they choose not to re-sign him and move in a different direction. And I believe, depending on what happens this season and what they do in the playoffs, that'll be a big determining factor for Poyle. And it might be a decision that's really easy to make.
Well, I don't know, because again, what's going to clog up that decision is Dante Fabro. Apparently Nashville tried to sign him this offseason. He didn't want to. He's going back to BU. He's in his third season at BU. He's a captain. He's very talented, all-around defenseman, but has really good offensive game. He's going to be looking next summer to sign as well. Or if he goes into his senior year, then you're in trouble, because then at that point, if he has a great year and he wants to be a top 4 guy somewhere, there may be nothing David Poyle can do.
It's setting up another Jimmy Vesey situation.
But you know what? Look at yes and no. Look at the assets Nashville has.
Yeah, that's
so. Look at them. Okay, you want to move to a younger guy? We'll trade Ekholm.
Right.
They can do that, but I guess it depends if they want to.
But Peter,
also the guy. It's up to the guy, though, Peter. Fabro holds the hammer in the sense that if he has certain things that he feels like he wants to be on that team, and he feels like his position is blocked, it doesn't matter what
then you get rid of Ekholm.
But the thing is, why would you get rid of Ekholm when Ekholm is the most affordable and probably the best bang for the buck of the 4 top defensemen? He's making $3.5 million.
Because he's the easiest to get rid of, and look at his age, so you carry on. I'm not saying you should. Let's just be really clear here. I'm not saying, Ekholm's the guy you trade because he's the odd man out. It's the decision-making process here that you go through to say, okay, look at these deals. You're going to make a choice between Yossi and Ekholm. Maybe you trade Yossi and you keep Ekholm because he's got longer term on there. But there are options for Poyle to get out of this if he wants to move one of those 2 guys. I'm not saying he should. And the strategy and the long-term decision is to get Fabro into play, is to do this because this unhinges the logjam. He can do it because of the way those contracts are. I mean, Poyle is I don't like the Johansson deal. I know I'm an anomaly in that. I don't like it. But the guy is a contract whisperer. What does he do that gets people to give up some of these things? Is he hypnotizing them in the room? It's incredible.
Well, I mean, Tennessee is a no-tax state. It's a great place to play. I mean, I've never been in Nashville, but from everything I've heard, it's a phenomenal environment. I mean, people want to buy into that, and I don't blame Ellis for extending their 8 years. I'm a little surprised he did it with no protection in terms of no trade or no move. But they actually have a window of 2 years because, until Yossi becomes a UFA, they may keep the group that they have. And then the guy that might be the one to go, it could be PK Subban because he's $9 million and, he'll be 30 at that point, and it'll only be 2 years, and some teams would be willing to take a Subban for a 2-year shot at things. But that's. But there's,
you can't rule out that they may just keep all 4 of them.
Yeah,
I mean that is an option that is definitely on the table. They don't feel like they have to trade them. They might be able to figure it out. You don't know where the cap will be, then as well. But the idea of having 4 defensemen you pay a lot of money to, and then just having a 5 and a 6 and a 7 that are just kind of extra parts, veteran guys. Yeah. I think that's very appealing.
I was going to say, Kevin, that's a completely valid point. Considering the age those guys are in, you can run another 4 years with those guys, maybe longer. And as long as you have something else coming in, they could just as easily find what Fabro wants to call another team and trade him. Is he a right shot D? Yeah, because if he is, you should call the Leafs. Well,
here's the thing: Fabro's agent definitely told him to say something this offseason because from the Tennessean, when he was asked about his, basically using his right as a college player to pursue free agency. He said, I honestly don't think it'll come to that, but a lot of things can happen.
Yeah.
VC, I mean,
and I think you're right on about how he's a great asset to move. Like, you know, for the trade deadline and you're trying to win the cup and you need one player, and depending on who it is or whatever, like, you know, he's a great chip. Or if you're trying to make a big deal for some, you know, long-term fit on your team, you could do that because, you know, your defense is strong. Like, that's a terrific. And, you know, Poyle has done a great job of filling those 5 and 6 and 7 spots. I mean, they always have veteran guys, and they're always, you know, they
I will say Jeff Keelty has really stocked that pond every year, man. He's one of the best.
And you're right. You're right, Peter. Fabro is a right-hand shot, so Kyle Dubas on speed dial. One thing though about this deal that I immediately thought about when it came to, you know, the ramifications throughout the league. You know, we've seen over the last month and a half, you know, Ekman Larson and Doughty and McDonough and Yarmulson, all these guys who were 2019 UFAs just fall off the radar. Now your top 4 defensemen for next year's free agent class are Erik Karlsson, who's not re-signed yet, Jake Gardiner, Tyler Myers, and Jay Bouwmeester. And from the Toronto perspective, if Jake Gardiner puts up another 50 points, which I think is likely with the offense that they're going to have, the Leafs are not going to be able to afford to sign Jake Gardiner. He's going to probably ask for anywhere between $6.5 to $7 million AAV on a long-term deal. And if they're signing Marner and Matthews, they simply will not be able to afford Jake Gardiner on a new deal. So
I disagree with that premise only because it may come down to Kyle Dubas going to, you know, Mike Babcock and saying, if it comes down to Jake Gardiner or William Nylander, what do you need more? And he might say he needs Jake Gardiner more, regardless of, you know, any of his deficiencies. He's still an offensive defenseman, and that defense isn't spectacular. They may have to keep him.
Russ,
so I can get back for a second onto me. But here you go. You know, how about this? So you got the stupid thing. But you have the fashionable 50, and you're seeing PK everywhere right now. I mean, I don't know if you noticed this. I mean, obviously he's dating the lovely Lindsey Vonn, right?
Uh-huh.
But he is everywhere. I mean, I can't remember a hockey player in the off season who, for a long time now, you know, this is way more than you.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with? I mean, yeah, it's good. It's good.
No, it's just good for the NHL. It doesn't have to do with anything. But I think
I don't think it's good or bad for the NHL. It's good for PK. It's attracting attention.
It's good for the NHL.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how you could say that's not good for the NHL.
Well, I guess I
love this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, this is absolutely something that they love to do. They love the fact that this goes on. But
I do think that, you know, just to finish the point with Russ is that I honestly with Toronto, it's going to probably be, is Timothy Liljegren ready to step in the NHL? And if they think he's ready next year, then they probably either let Gardner go or they trade him at the deadline. I just don't think they're going to do the same mistake that they did last year with not trading James Van Riemsdyk at the deadline. So that'll be something that we'll watch all year.
I'd be willing to bet right here on the air that if the Maple Leafs are in contention, they are not trading Jay Gardner. I don't care about James Van Riemsdyk and what happened. That doesn't happen. Historically, naming a contending team that traded away their number 1 offensive defenseman thing. Just give me one. That's all I'm asking.
It's insane. I mean, it's
St. Louis Blues and Kevin Shattenkirk.
I'm willing to bet right now, Mike. I'll bet whatever you want to bet.
Okay, well, I'll pay for dinner the next time.
There's no way. There's no way.
That's the bet. Okay. That's the bet. They're not trading Jay Gardner.
No, there's no way. I mean, you definitely lose him. You get the cap space at the end of the year that he gives you, and that's then you go for a run. You make a run for it.
You were smart to bet with Mike, Kev, because X never pays up. But.
That's not.
X has owed me like 10,000 cookies, and he's never.
Guys are pathetic. It's not true at all. You know that. All right, so. Yeah, no, I agree, and that's the long debate we don't have to get into again. But I'm with Kevin 100% on that, and I've argued that point before. And I think they did the right thing in keeping James Van Riemsdyk too. I didn't think they should have traded him.
It's just stupid.
They were a good team. They had a chance. Anyway, we're going down this road.
We're not going to win the Stanley Cup, so let's stop that.
Too many times down this road. Let's talk about the Red Wings because a couple things happened in the last week or so. And first of all, the Larkin signing, which I thought was a solid number for one of my favorite young players.
Well, this is the question I have for Kevin. It's like we did our little game a couple weeks ago where we were guessing, what Larkin was going to get and how long of a term. And I think everybody on the panel said 7 or 8 years. And I think when we were talking about Larkin with you the last time, we thought it was going to be, a lengthy deal, and he only got 5, and there's a no trade clause at the end of the 5 years. That's reminiscent of Stamkos and of Tavares and of Kane and Taves out of their ELC. And it doesn't connote the security that I would have thought that either Larkin or the Wings would have wanted on an extension.
I think this has everything to do with the fact that Larkin knows that he has potential to be the leader and the key guy on this team, and he'll want a big contract. At the end of this, I think he's confident he's going to get that. Don't forget he's a native Detroiter.
Yeah.
This is his city. Most everyone is predicting he'll be the captain of this team. And I think this gives him just kind of an option of hitting another, home run contract as well. And, the Red Wings get 5 years, which is enough for them to know if he's going to be, in the same category as as an Eichel in Buffalo or, even Matthews. This is what I would say about Larkin. Like, I think he's as important to Detroit as Matthews is in Toronto and Eichel is in Buffalo. Now, is he that talented? He may be just a little short of Eichel in terms of ability, but he's a very skilled player, and he has some intangibles that I think put him even better. He's a very natural leader. People like him. They respond to him. There's a charity game going on here in Detroit for the Jim Johansson Foundation and for a scholarship fund for his kid. And it's really on the strength of Dylan Larkin's personality that this has come together. When Larkin calls people and asks them to play, they respond to that. He's very, very likable. So I think this is a win-win for both player and team. I think the Red Wings are happy to have the 5 years, and now they can watch him grow. And if they got to pay more at the end of it, I think they're fine with that to keep him around. And I think for Larkin, he's going to get enough money. He'll still be a rich man, and he's got the option if it turns out he is a superstar, a guy that contends for the scoring title to hit, maybe to get a double-digit contract at the end of it. I think to me the most interesting story in Detroit right now is Zetterberg, though. The Zetterberg situation is really fascinating to me. Here's the issue that I think is at the heart of this, is that Zetterberg has played now all the games, but I was told 3 years ago by a Swedish writer who knew Zetterberg well and knew, the particulars, that Zetterberg's back is so bad that he could easily get any doctor to say, you shouldn't be playing. Another player, an ex-Red Wing, told me that Zetterberg's back is worse than Cronwell's knee.
Wow.
And that Cronwell basically is playing on one knee. Yeah. So the thought is that, and Zetterberg now has this contract, of course, that is getting to the part where, is it 1 million this year or
no, it's I just looked it up. 3.35 for this year, then 1 million the next 2
after that. Yeah. So there had been thought, even 3 years ago, that when he gets down to these numbers, that it's just not going to be worth it to him financially to kind of stay on. But the key is, from the Red Wings perspective, is that thought that any doctor who looks at his x-rays. Now, the other element to this that hasn't been talked about too much is by the end of last year, he wasn't practicing at all. In the second half of the season, he did no practices. He only played the games. So it was getting worse. He did play all the games. And now we're hearing that he's had a bad off season, that things haven't gone well. He hasn't been able to train like he has in the past. So when you factor all that in, it almost sounds to me as the Red Wings are trying to tell everybody they feel he's not coming back. And Zetterberg might not.
Question, Kevin, is this contract one of those deals that cap recapture is it considered like the Luongo deal, like the other deals, like Shea Weber's deal? Because if I looked at the breakdown here, it was mostly in the $7.5 to $7.75 million range for the first 9 years of the 12-year deal, and then it dives down. So I don't know whether, like, is it going to be one of these deals where he gets traded like Pavel Datsyuk and he's on LTIR, or can they just let him retire, or what is
Well,
there?
he won't. I think they're going to try to. I don't know how this all works either because I haven't even looked at it yet. But I think they're going to try to put him on the. I don't think he will retire.
Okay.
I think they're going to say that. He'll look again at the end of the season or whatever, and then they'll put him on long-term IR. Is what I think. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think we're going to talk about him, and maybe we won't because the Red Wings aren't the kind of contending team. But I think we'll be talking about him. Like if this was going on in with the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Toronto Maple Leafs right now or the Pittsburgh Penguins, there'd be a lot of more notice to, what's happening here because everyone, people are going to want to see the medical records on this. But
just think of this, just think of this, Zach. If that does happen, and he goes on LTIR this year, and for the balance of the 3 years remaining, for the next 2 years, they have $10 million in players in Zetterberg and Johan Franzen that are on LTIR. That's, I think, probably more than any team in the league.
Yeah, I would say it has to be, right? I mean, it's got to be pretty close. I mean, that's an amazing. It really is an amazing. It reminds me a little bit of Forsberg towards the end of his career, where they're just in so much pain but still playing somehow. I think Forsberg played a couple years, probably like Zetterberg just played. Where it just completely.
It was worse though with Forsberg in the sense that he would pop in and out of the lineup so much. Just when the team got used to him playing, he would be out on injury. Then they would be like waiting for him to return, almost like stalling the offense, and then he would never return. And it really affected the team. At least Zetterberg has not done that. So I think it's a little.
I mean, but if he says I think the best thing would be, Kevin, for him to come out and say, "Yeah, I'm just basically taking this year to get better."
Well, what is interesting is everybody thinks this is be great for the Red Wings because they're already in a youth movement and everything else, but. Zetterberg is a very important player in that room, and Larkin's development certainly was aided by the presence of Zetterberg, it would change the dynamic there, to be sure. Like I said this too. Fans were upset that they signed Vanek and kept Green around. Well. When they bring up Hronek from Grand Rapids and put him as a point man, do you want him to try to figure out by himself, or do you want a guy like Green there to kind of show him, how to be a power play point man for the next couple of years? And the same thing on Vanek. Vanek is a very likable guy, and he's been referred to as kind of another assistant coach. Well, they're bringing in Zadina. Who is a great hands guy? Isn't it better to have a guy like Vanek around that can kind of tutor that? So, and the same thing on Zetterberg. Like as much as fans, I think well that'll be great. Well, we won't have his cap hit if he can indeed but put on the IR. And I'm assuming he can, but I really don't have an answer to that. Then I think there will be some loss here for all these young players. I think it is a benefit to a guy like Zetterberg. Zetterberg's a great captain, and he's a great presence. He doesn't like losing. He takes it all very seriously, and the amount of work he's had to put in to stay in the lineup is incredible. So I think the Red Wings. Ken Holland said that he wanted him back, and I think he was actually being sincere because I think he likes these young players, but. You can't just throw a bunch of young players in and say, "Okay, grow up."
Right.
It doesn't work that way. So
the weird thing about the Red Wings is they haven't really gone over the cap, but they really don't have any cap space either.
No, that's the thing that irritates fans. That with this latest signing, they have nothing left. They can't make any moves and everything. So.
Yeah, but it clears up a lot after this year. I mean, if what we're talking about does happen, you could see a complete changeover in the sense that, players that have been on the scene for the last, 10 to 15 years, Kronwall's contract is up, Jimmy Howard's contract is up, and Zetterberg, if he doesn't play, he falls off the scene, and we know Franzen hasn't played for years. So, that group moves away, and then it's the Dylan Larkin, Athanasiou, Mantha group that is in a leadership role.
That group definitely takes it from there. All right, so this I thought was kind of interesting.
I'll mute you, Kevin, for a sec while the phone's ringing.
No, it's fine. So this is the logo for the Egyptian national hockey team. Ready for this? I thought this was good.
Okay.
All right, here we go. This is I think this is pretty awesome. Okay, this is like I love when this is the Egypt ice hockey.
Wow.
Team, which, first of all, is the fact that there is an ice hockey team in Egypt at all is.
Well, United Arab Emirates has a team. I mean, I heard Ramses III is a heck of a goalie.
There you have it.
What's the team? What's the team name? The Alexandria King Tuts.
I just like it. I like it. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So this is the next thing was the Humboldt. So this is kind of interesting. So I saw this and I just thought obviously the Humboldt experience, just such a big deal last year, such a horrible experience for everybody involved. And at the same time, there was a lot of so much love throughout the league and going, not just in the NHL league, but just everywhere. Everywhere there was hockey. Anywhere you went to a youth game, you went to a college game, you saw this, any hockey at all. This was something that we just kept going and going and going. And this was so this is what was posted, and I'm going to read it to you. I'll show you it. So hopefully you can see it, but I'm going to post. This was what posted outside the board, outside I guess it was the team entrance, the player entrance. So I'll read it to you since it's too small to read. But it says, "Another year on the ice for the fallen Broncos. As you look over the boards this year, you'll see 10 numbers painted onto our ice. Each is the jersey number of a victim of the Humboldt bus tragedy. We are not putting these numbers there for the fans or for the hockey parents. We put them there for the 10 guys who suddenly lost their lives on the way to a playoff game. And as a simple reminder, the rest of us, that we will never really know when our last shift will be. Play hard every shift," and that's from Humboldt Strong. So I thought that was really well done.
Oh, I like it.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I like it too.
And it's a really classy thing, and how they went about, just doing it and saying this is for just for these kids, for these players, and keeping them on the ice. It's got a cool symbolism to it overall.
Kevin, I'm sorry if anybody wants to comment on that.
Good, Mikey. That's all.
No, I didn't want to move on until if anybody wanted to say anything.
All we have to say. It's great, and I just think Humboldt's. Our hearts still go out to them, and they're handling it really, really well.
Yeah. Kevin, I know that you wrote and you mentioned earlier about the new Wednesday night schedule for NBC, and I sort of found it humorous because I looked at the schedule and obviously, they're going to focus on U.S. markets, but with Tavares now in Toronto and Matthews there, Toronto was on twice on NBCSN and the outdoor game in Annapolis. So they were on TV nationally in the U.S. 3 times. I looked; they've increased it to 4. So I'm not Winnipeg is on there and they weren't on at all last year, and they're one of the more exciting teams in the league. But
5 times, one more than the Leafs.
Really?
They were on 5 times, really?
Well, that's what happens when you make the conference finals, Mike. You actually get some exposure, and people realize that they're a fun team to watch.
I'm talking strictly regular season, because playoffs everything was on.
That's why, because they made the conference finals. Everyone got a good look at them.
Yeah.
They played 3 U.S. teams: Minnesota, Nashville, and then Vegas.
Right.
People got to look at them. They want to see more.
Yeah. And the Leafs were on against Boston, but I'm saying in the regular season there was one game in Buffalo and there was another game, I think it was the Rangers, and that was it. And then the outdoor game. And I'm just saying, it's like, I still think the focus there is on Chicago, Boston, New York, Philadelphia.
People were complaining about it. There's no question.
Well, yeah, but I've had this discussion with some of my readers. Like, what did you think was going to happen if they were going to do diverse? That they were suddenly going to reverse it?
Right.
I was talking to the Predators about this, and they were one of the big beneficiaries. They're going to be on more, but Minnesota will be on more than them. Minnesota is also increasing, and then their wonder is, or at least some of the fans in that, how could they be on fewer times? Because as much as this was a concerted effort to try to bring more diverse collection of teams into the schedule. It wasn't they were going to turn it upside down. Like the Washington Capitals are still on Wednesday night on 8 times, and the Penguins 7 times.
Right.
It's still, they're still going to put the major markets on. But, as the Predators said to me, they looked at it pretty well. The group of teams that were excluded is now greatly reduced. Now I thought the teams that really had a legitimate beef were the Devils with Taylor Hall, who had no love whatsoever. And of course the Dallas Stars. And, it's funny, we had just talked about the Dallas Stars before about, their issue is, they've got some stars and they're fun to watch, but, they're in Dallas where their television numbers aren't all that strong. So, NBC still has to pay homage to the bigger markets. That's never going to.
The problem is too, Kev, with the Dallas Stars, and I've talked to Marty Turco about this a few times, and he really disliked that time zone factor with Dallas, and it is hard to sort of match it up. Like if you are going to match up a Dallas game for the East Coast to watch, what time are you having the fans show up there for the game, right? I mean, it's going to be a weird time.
Yeah, it's just. They're never going to be. It's never going to be perfect, but it is. I think it's better. It's a better deal than it was.
Can I be the mic in this discussion for a second? I'm gonna throw this out there and into my conspiracy theory about this whole thing. I think this is about selling center ice package, because that was the first thing I thought of when I saw it. Okay, you have, because certain games definitely they get bigger ratings. Like Pittsburgh, Philly always gets huge ratings no matter what. The Rangers, Islanders, that'll do well. Chicago, Detroit, these games will do well, no matter where they are, right? But when those games are always on, when the big game, like when you look at what you're buying the center ice package for, when every big game is on NBC Sports Network, so the center ice package becomes something that you're buying just for, for if you're like a transplant, you're trying to follow your team from someplace else.
Right.
But I mean, there have been times, to make this, like if the Penguins are playing, say the Penguins are playing the Capitals and they're not on nationally. Suddenly that's a game that people are like, oh, it's on the center ice package. Maybe I'm going to buy the center ice package now because of a couple games on there that I see that I really want to watch.
But I don't think they left the counter programming to be that good for the other thing, because NBC would complain because they're paying the most money.
Yeah, they really are. The genesis of this was simply, and this was talked about the league, was how well the Winnipegs and the Vegases did in playoff, and they know the game at NBC. They get it that the Winnipeg Jets are on the verge of becoming just a great team.
Yeah.
And they know the Maple Leafs now are instantly among the Stanley Cup favorites. They see even the Arizona Coyotes are getting better, and the Vegas Golden Knights. I even wrote this in my story. It was the highest. The final was the highest. The game 5, I think, was I forget now, second or third highest rated game ever.
Wow.
Something like that. For network. I mean, they did really well. The average was almost 5 million people, watched, the Stanley Cup final, and they just feel like they've got to just kind of show some of these markets that ironically, people complain about, like how many times did we hear about, I'm tired of seeing the Vegas pregame show. I want to repeat what I've said on that consistently. I never understood that because, and I use the example of the Detroit Tigers. I watch them play. I know they don't start till 7:10 this first pitch,
right?
And I don't turn it on till 7:10. Like I don't watch the pregame. I don't need to know it. I know enough about the team,
right?
So I don't understand why people just don't tune in at 8:24.
Exactly.
At the start of each series in my house, we actually watched the beginning of a Vegas series because we knew there was going to be a little show involved. Like I thought it was cool.
It was great. It was great. So
Everybody here was like, my wife's like, oh man, what time are they going to do what time are they going to do the pregame show?
What I also think might be at work here from the NHL perspective is with the CBA expiring in 2022, and I think the NBC deal expires the same year. There's an opportunity here with the expanding in teams like Winnipeg and Toronto, as you're saying, Kevin, for them to get like the NBA and get another television package. Like the NBA's got ABC and ESPN, but they also have TNT. So what's to say that there's not an opening here for ESPN to come in and get a Sunday night or Monday night NHL game of the week, and that's additional income that the NHL can generate, and they have teams more than just the Pittsburghs and the Washingtons and the New York Rangers that stations in the U.S. will be willing to put on their airwaves.
Yeah.
Nothing. But what about the center ice package again? I mean, this is something that they don't care about.
Well, they've never really hit it hard. Aren't you always amazed at how they don't really advertise that much?
Sure, they really don't.
I've never understood that, to be honest.
I think the reason they don't advertise it is because they are a little bit embarrassed about how the thing plays out. Because when you get to the playoffs, it becomes almost a non-factor.
Yeah, it is a complete non-factor because every game, like in the States, in Canada, every game is on Sportsnet, 360, whatever, the different stations. And in the US, it's on CNBC, MSNBC, or whatever. It's all the NBCs and the Golf Channel.
The blackout stuff, they get hounded by,
Well,
but that's true in all the other ones, and yet they advertise the heck out of those.
No, you're right. You're right.
They offer a free week or a free couple weeks at the beginning of the season and in the middle of the year, because I've been a Center Ice subscriber for years because I don't get all the Maple Leaf games but the pet peeve that I have is the fact that if you're paying what you're paying, you should be able to watch the game on the broadcast that you want to watch. And if you're watching it on DirecTV or on Game Center Live, you can watch the Winnipeg broadcast or the Toronto broadcast. On Center Ice, if you're on a cable subscription like I am and they have Spectrum, they only have a certain amount of channels. So you'll more than likely, when it's Toronto, Nashville, get the Nashville broadcast instead of the Toronto broadcast.
Yeah, the only thing that bugs me about it is the games on the NHL network, they get completely blacked out. And so you can't watch it on a mobile device or something else. And that's a little limiting. But other than that, I think it's great.
Yeah, I think that they've done a lot. The technology's caught up and saved the NHL from itself on a couple things, obviously.
Even the owners, like James Dolan, who were withholding HD when they switched over for the MLB ban, didn't do that anymore. So I was thankful for that.
I know. I love when you can only watch a game in SD nowadays. You see that? That's just the most.
That was the case for a while.
I know.
It still is.
Last year, there were a couple times when that was the case.
It still is. They only have 8 channels that are high def, and the other 3 or 4 are SD. So I can watch. It's
ridiculous, by the way, because it's no different for them to make. And they used to be it's just a small money thing that they're trying to save money on.
It's like watching a hockey game through the bottom of a Coke bottle.
I know. But we all grew up on that. We all watched that way forever. It wasn't that bad. I remember.
Go back to holding the antenna, trying to bring in Channel 9 Canada to watch Hockey Night in Canada. So
that was me with Channel 9 out of New York, man. That was trying to get the Rangers out of New York on Channel 9, and just
I did that with TV and with radio, Kevin. To try to listen to St. Louis Cardinals games on KMOX in St. Louis, and on a summer night, I was the human antenna sticking out my hand.
Yeah. It's one of my fondest memories is trying to watch the movie Pork Chop Hill on a Canadian station and standing up, 2 feet in front of the TV, holding the antenna. Wow, I watched that movie.
We're totally spoiled.
Yeah.
And we have to sort of remember that. But you know what? Unfortunately, your new audience has never had that experience, and you have to cater to it. And that's probably the biggest problem with it. I think one of the problems, and Kevin, you may have some insight in this, and Eki too, is the NHL is still figuring out how to manage digital rights. They've got an idea, but they maybe don't have the right partners, or they haven't found the right solution where they can go all in a certain direction. I know one of the criticisms has been the partnership with MLB doesn't quite deliver what they thought it would be. And that's an issue. But I mean, you know, if you buy Game Center online, you should be able to watch with relatively small delay the game you want. That's really what the standard should be. And I don't know if they found the right partner or the right solution, or what they're trying to do with Game Center, because there's a lot of other data that comes with that game. And if you actually need it, and that might make some stats guys go bonkers because they're scraping all the data, but could you maybe make that a second tier service? So that if you want the data,
Peter, don't give many ideas, please.
And just to illustrate that point, Peter, I was at the Air Canada Center at live watching a Leaf game and said, okay, let's go on to Game Center Live and see how far behind the play is. It was 1.5 minutes in game time.
I actually like that, and whenever I'm in the press box, I do that on purpose because I can know it's 1.5 minutes behind, so I have it on, and that way I can sit there and if something happens.
But if you're watching at home, that's inexcusable.
In this day and age in Twitter, where everybody's like live tweeting everything that's happening, yes, I agree.
Technologically, it should be live. It should be as close to being maybe a second or two delay, because there's no reason for it to be that far behind it. I think it's all it is that MLB BAM is not putting the money into the technology, and that's inexcusable.
Right. And one thing before we go, I mean, I think that also I've always predicted this, Peter, and I've said this before, that the way this is heading is the NHL would love to not have NBC or anybody else. And they would love. I mean, they're working towards just covering themselves, right? If they could just broadcast themselves, and if they were getting enough markets and cut out all the television rights, if they could make enough money. I think I'm surprised that the NFL Network hasn't done this yet, or somebody else. That this is heading towards. I mean, they're obviously getting these huge money still from the CBSs and the NBA and the Foxes of the world, but the goal here has to be to cut out the middleman, like to just be able to do your own thing. And
I got to do
a guy who worked in a middleman industry and then got out of it. I understand the desire to do that, but the NHL or any league has to make a decision on, can you maximize the distribution to get the same revenue someone else can distribute it for, as well as they do right now? Are you going to be able to do what NBC or anyone else does as well as they do it?
You can do it better,
because when you cut them out, you cut everything out.
Yes,
and that's the danger. So now,
who are
your announcers?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Who are your analysts? Who are all those things you get in the broadcast deal?
But we've already done
them now. You control them. You got to set up studios. You got to set up all the remote stuff. You got to own the trucks, lease them. It's not easy.
Yeah. Brian Gumbel was a big hit on NFL Network doing NFL games, believe me.
I mean, the print media they're already covering themselves in the print media, right? So I mean,
that's the easy one.
No, that's the tendon is, if everybody has internet coming into their house and you don't need to pick it up off of an antenna anymore, that's when things change. But what you're talking about for the NFL and stuff like that, but for the NHL, you're talking about you still need cable anyway. So you're not looking at most games aren't on NBC that you can pick up over the air.
Yeah.
Right. But it's 100 this year, so that's a big upgrade.
Yeah. But the thing is you don't need them. You may not need them to actually get the product in your home, but you need them to do the production of the product.
Yes, I agree. There's definitely
and if here's a really interesting thing about business, and we've watched it time and time again. Technology is this great aspect to the world that we think is easily understood and used. But what technology without a strategy is bad. It's not, if we build it, they will come. So if a league or someone thinks we can do what NBC does or CBS or Fox or whatever, and they think they can go and be as good as they are, you're gonna take a lot of lumps, and you better make sure your numbers are very tight, because there's more failed companies that were sports business companies like the NHL that tried to be technology companies instead. That's a big leap, and it's an expensive one. And if they thought they could do it well with SAP, we all know what a disaster that's been.
Russ has got to finish the show with X-Addict here.
Yeah, I'm going to do a quickie X-Addict. It's I have a 1951-52 Parkhurst rookie of Edgar Laprade. He was a let's see, that way. Can you see it now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, he was a 1946 Calder winner, which, you know, again, he told me back then. It's funny also on the back, no stats, totally blank.
Totally blank card, just the front of a card.
Yeah, just the front. They used to give you a tray, a silver tray when you won the Calder back in the 40s and before that. And so, like, but he said, yeah, a silver tray. But he said he enjoyed getting a silver tray more than he thinks that the newer guys, you know, getting the actual, because you just get I think you just get a replica of the trophy. He said the silver tray was more versatile, like he could do more things with it.
Well, now every time you're serving deviled eggs, you'd be like, you know, I'm serving deviled eggs on my Calder trophy tray.
Right. And so I found that kind of interesting. The other thing is he also was a Lady Bing winner. And I guess the Rangers have only had like 2 guys that have ever won the Calder and the Lady Bing in their careers. So that was something interesting. But the card itself, this looks like the pictures from their old practice rink, which used to have horrible ice. And so, like, it's funny with these pictures back then, what shows up, you know, there's a little bit of colorization, right? But then, like, the face is like totally black and white. Like, it's just, but these are classic cards. Like the Parkies, like these are a big deal in the collecting world. And the fact that he was already 5 years into his career before he got a rookie card is a whole other situation.
I have an older one, even though it's not hockey. It's a Mark Koenig 1932 Big League Chew card.
Yeah, that's nice.
This is the, first of all, it's not in mint condition, as you can see the nice rounded edges and the fade. But this was the year that I believe Koenig was on the Chicago Cubs bench when they played the Yankees in the 32 World Series. And the reported called shot was actually Babe Ruth pointing into the dugout, telling him to shut the you-know-what up.
Yeah, shut the F up.
Yeah.
It's true. And but one day I'll bring on, I have like a T207. It's like 100-something-year-old baseball card. But I wanted to show up the hockey one because, like, cool. Yeah, it's really like those Parkhurst cards are fun, but it is weird that back then you had to really be established for them to make a card of you. It didn't matter if you were a rookie, where now rookie cards are all the rage. Back then, they were like, we could wait on you.
Yeah, guys have rookie cards before they've even played, right? Like
I mean, now that's commonplace. Yep. That's
really cool. All right, well, thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you, Kevin, so much. And thanks to Peter and everybody for joining us today on this summer day. Remember, you can follow everybody on Twitter. It's @by Kevin Allen, @Mike in Buffalo, @Tessier.
Nope.
Teddy.
Sorry. No. At Sportsology for Russ. And we'll be back in tomorrow. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Have a good day.